Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Hope you've had a chance during the break to check your emails and do whatever's necessary, and that you're now able to give your undivided attention to this, I think, hopefully, very interesting track. So the subject is the focus on taking back control of ULD, and we talked a little bit about it earlier on. And now we're going to get into a lot more detail. So without further ado, let me also introduce my co-presenters. I'll give about a 15 to 20-minute presentation on the general background of where we're going on this. And then Chris Fabre, who's in the bottom left-hand corner, at least of my screen, wearing the light blue shirt, is, there you go, with the universe in the background, will give us some insights into the technology that we might use in developing this new platform. And then in the top left is Arno Brolly, who is, like me, doing this in the wee small hours because he's in Singapore and I'm in Hong Kong. Arno will talk about how this may also take us into providing a similar level of service and the kind of cross-integration, cross-fertilization with the maritime shipping industry. So without further ado, let me move to a PowerPoint and share my screen. And let me just see that is, yeah, there we go. Okay, so taking back control of ULD. As I mentioned earlier, you know, we have for many, many, many years been agonizing over the lack of ULD, lack of control of ULD when they move off airport into freight forwarders and even consignees and shippers all over the place. I used this slide in my keynote presentation, so I won't spend a great deal of time on it, but just to say that yes, we need to deal with this. There is an issue here that it's been around for a very long time, and particularly in this session, we will talk about slow or overdue returns because that's where our biggest focus is. And just a little bit of background here. In a way, some of you may recall that we had originally planned to do this event back last, I think, October, maybe October or November. And we then postponed it because we got the vibe that everybody was just simply up to their necks in dealing with the peak season. And then we were supposed to do it earlier in February. I think it was in February. And unfortunately, I broke a bone in my foot and was a bit incapacitated. So we had to postpone it again. But actually, it's worked out very well because in the interim, we've come a long way on this journey. And the time is now very appropriate to be able to share this whole thing with you. As I said, I also showed you this slide. We're not asking the industry to do anything different from an IATA point of view. The IATA wording is about as perfect as it can get. Again, we came across this by accident. I had no idea it was there. And so far, at least 75% of all the people I've surveyed had never seen this before. About 25% had. So to me, it's a small step to get this to build on this existing IATA documentation. And it's also here in the ULD control receipt. And the ULD control receipt goes back again. Nobody could tell me when it might have been put in the TACT manual, but I suspect it's been there for 30, 40, 50 years. And the same in the ULD control receipt, where it states loud and clear, the receiving party shall be liable for demurrage if the ULD is held in excess of the time specified in the applicable tariff. How clear can it be? And that's just there in the small print at the bottom of the IATA standard RP 1654 ULD control receipt. So why does the airline industry choose to live with this pain? Well, of course, it's hard to know how it originally got this way, but it seems likely from the feedback we get from most of the people we speak to, is that the cargo salespeople believe that they have to give the equipment out with no strings attached in order to maintain their competitive advantage. Well, here's the strange thing. If every airline is doing this, there is no competitive advantage anymore. There's only an industry-wide disadvantage because everybody is allowing their equipment to be used willy-nilly without any consequences for late return. Another belief that we came across was that other modes of transport do something better. And by the way, it's not only the shipping industry, also the rail. We have documentation on the demurrage in rail car industry in the US. And to put a couple of numbers on this, from what I can tell, in the ocean shipping industry, the annual demurrage charges are something in excess of 4 billion, that's with a B, US dollars. And we know for a fact, because it's published, that in the rail industry, just in North America, it's $500 million US dollars. But anyway, there's this belief that other modes of transport do some things better and differently. Well, I don't think that's the case at all. They still use a paper document when they record the 40-foot sea container or 20-foot sea container going out of the terminal gate. They still send an EDI message. They don't have any kind of electronic tagging on their equipment in general. A few specialist equipments might, but in general, they don't, and they never will. They've got 20 million of these boxes. The chances of them all being tagged is zero. So, and is there another question that came up? Is there some kind of legality that makes it possible for them to do it and for the airlines not to do it? No, it's quite within the airline's rights to publish a tariff that says we're going to charge. So, but there is this belief. And I think third, and probably very, very important, is there's been a failure to have an industry-wide approach to this. It's been forgotten. It's been allowed to get brushed under the carpet. And this is one thing that ULD CARE absolutely wants to change. So then we have this matrix here, which is quite interesting. Just, will you excuse me for a moment? The cat's making a terrible noise. I'm sorry for that short interruption there. So if we look at this matrix, we've got maritime and air across the top, and we've got charged and not charged down the side. So when we look at maritime, there's demurrage charges for cargo and there's detention charges for the equipment. When we look for, on the air side, cargo, there's still demurrage. If you leave your boxes of cargo in an air cargo terminal more than the 3 days, you will be charged. And also special purpose equipment, such as temperature controlled ULD, animal transport units, anything in that area, they will be charged if you keep them too long. But when it comes to ULD, down here in the not charged, it's a free lunch, whereas in maritime, there is no free lunch. So this is a completely inexplicable situation which needs to be addressed. So what have we done about this so far? Well, first of all, we started a research project about halfway through last year where we reached out and interviewed a number of people across the whole air cargo industry. And we concluded that in late last year, just before Christmas. And what I would classify as misunderstandings, but there was nothing in the way of a deal breaker. And then, since then, in the first quarter of this year, we've worked on creating a white paper, which in fact, I'm pleased to say, we literally finalized a week ago. And that is opens the door to the next step. And at the same time as we've been doing all this research, we initiated a number of tech solutions. We did the proof of concept blockchain-based platform with CETA. We've looked at a number of different data capture devices, and we're working on those. And we've looked into various data transfer protocols, APIs, and so on. So we think we're making quite good progress on broad fronts. So what is it we're trying to do? We want to get the airline industry as a whole to agree that this is something that's got to be changed across the entire industry. It can't be allowed to continue as some sort of competitive advantage. Okay, maybe some airlines will want to give specially or more free days to a special customer, a high volume customer. That's fairly common in the shipping industry. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a complete embargo on just giving it away free of charge. Secondly, we need to deliver a modern, transparent, and trustworthy platform to process ULD moves to third parties. We already do this with the interlining system. It works all day, every day, and delivers exactly that. I could count on one hand the number of disputes that have been brought to my attention in the last 5 or 6 years. It just very, very rarely ever happens. So we know a great deal about having such a system, and we think we can use this to further the ambition of bringing everybody under the same umbrella. And then we think we can build on various value add enhancements that we are sure will emerge. It's not just about clocking the ULD transfers between parties. There's a lot more data that could be processed if there is a suitable platform sitting in the middle. So, of course, we could just sit in our hands and do nothing. I mean, that is an option, but everybody knows the whole global logistics thing is a mess, and that's impacting on cargo flows. And if ULD are a mess, that just adds an extra layer of inefficiency into it. And we can see what's been happening in the last few months. Airlines have been rushing out, renting and buying as many pallets as they can get their hands on, and that's going to become increasingly difficult in the upcoming few months. And it's just not a solution. What business can justify just dealing with inefficiency by going out and just buying more assets? That's not sensible. So what will all this take? Well, subject matter know-how, and as I've said, we are probably the world's most experienced operator of a multi-user demurrage system. And we have an enormous wealth of industry knowledge across our members and directors. Technology, the world's our oyster. We got plenty of access to technology, and I think we have an appetite to use them. So then that really only leaves finance, and we do need to find the necessary money, not only to pay for the IT itself, but also to run what would be a significantly larger operation. And so finance is certainly one of the things we're going to have to look at. And we're looking also at developing different operating models. At the moment, we operate the IULD UG ourselves in-house, but that may not be the way for the future. So when can it happen? Well, as I've said, we've covered a lot already. We've done the research, we've done the technical development, we've done the justification. It's just really up to us now to do the implementation. And here's a little bit of a roadmap for the future. If we start on the left-hand side, if we establish an industry-wide demurrage platform, then we can see that the owners will be financially compensated for the late return of ULD. We can see that we can recover control of ULD assets, and we can see that we can open the gates for future technologies. And moving to the right-hand side of the screen, this means we can start to reposition ULD as a valuable resource instead of a cost center. And part of this will just put ULDs back on the map as something that worthwhile rather than just something that's a problem. When we recover control of the ULDs, we can give an improved ULD control function, which is always important, knowing where your assets are. We can implement damage cost recovery, which is something that, to my knowledge, is almost never being done. And we know that the ULD damage bill is in the order of $300+ million a year. Why do we allow this to happen? And there will be, yet to be determined, additional benefits, I'm quite sure. And then as a flow on from the opening gates for future technology, we can look at universally available data solutions. There will be new technologies coming. For that, we can be sure. And by having a modern state-of-the-art platform, we will be able to adapt and adopt these new technologies. So just wrapping up here, I'd like to conclude by giving you a little bit of a quick preview of the ULD Care white paper on demurrage, which I can assure you has taken a great deal of work. It's 23 pages long and a similar length appendix. It really is a comprehensive analysis of the issues. We have been through this left, right, up and down, and it really does dig deep. It's also based on extensive industry research. This is not just something that Bob and Urs cooked up one afternoon. It's based on extensive research that we've done. And it's backed with a lot of reference material. Again, there's substance to this. I think it will be very, very challenging for anybody to question the logic behind our approach. And just to take a few key words as a wrap-up out of the executive summary. Speed and efficiency form the backbone of air cargo operations. With a significant number of shippers now building up and breaking down of unit load devices off airport, there is one factor that dramatically reduces the ability of air cargo to deliver: the lack of a deterrent for the late return of empty ULDs back to its owner. I think that says it all. Thank you very much. I will now come back onto the screen, and I will I see we have a question in here, but I'll leave the questions and answers to the end. Please, everybody, feel free to put in your questions and answers, or your questions rather, and we will have time at the end to address them. So what I'd like to do now is hand over to Chris, who will give us a short tour into the big bad world of blockchain. Chris, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Bob. Let me share my screen. Here it is. I hope you see all my my first slide. So thank you very much for the opportunity to, in fact, give a very short summary of what we learned during the POC we did together in CETA, right? and how we could replatform ULD Care to achieve this vision that Bob just presented. Not only opening the platform to non-airlines companies, but also maybe putting in place the foundation for what Arno will present just after me, potentially the use in other industries. One thing which is key is that ULD Care is one of, or maybe the only platform of Demurage across all supply chain industry I know about. So certainly something here. So first, maybe a quick introduction of my company, Scar Republic. And to tell you, that's not going to be a tech talk. Our background is in middleware, so we've been doing B2B solution and platform for quite a while for big companies, big retailers, manufacturers, logistics company, and during that past life, we identify a need for something new, inspired from blockchain, yes, but also from what we learned on the field, helping people synchronize their ecosystem. And so we focus on aerospace, especially with CETA, which is our partner. And I'll show you one example of what you can do with the technology. But really, I'd like to start by why supply chain air transportation is ripe for evolution. In fact, since 40 years, companies synchronize on the status of their assets through messaging, kind of point-to-point exchange of information. Basically, the good old time of texting. And the problem of that is that you usually don't have a full visibility of a process, and you cannot track your assets. It's fragmenting processes, so it makes systems that are very fossilized very quickly and cannot change. And now everybody wants to integrate IoT and stuff like that. Of course, ULD Care is the first step toward the solution, like many others did, in fact, is introducing a platform in the middle that could help everybody see what's going on, and everybody has a view on the UCR related to their own assets, right? But now we can do better. And now we can use what we call Sky contract that you may know about as a smart contract, which is basically a technology that permits to unify the process. Instead of having this spaghetti plate in between companies, you put that spaghetti plate in a plate. You package it, you make a piece of code of it that people can connect to it, and everybody can run that smart contract. And what it does is that everybody can suddenly have access to the data, because that Sky contract will replicate to the data to everybody. You can easily integrate your backend application. And as now you're formalized how you operate, your rules, basically, or how you manage assets, you can change them more quicker. And you have, in fact, also in place a platform where you can go much, much further. So that's basically this elimination of point-to-point or black box control tower in the middle that permits to get rid of a lot of pains, partial visibility, poor transparency, friction, and all of that. And so the key is that because now you have put all these rules and all these exchanges in one single object, you can track more easily assets. You can be more reactive, give alerts, track and tracing from a single source of truth, and you can reconcile automatically the transactions. So that's the foundation on which that you can use to replatform ULD Care. So an example of what we do with this kind of technology, we're currently building with CETA an MRO blockchain to track the movement of parts. You know, when you maintain, and I know there is a lot of airline in the audience, I guess. So maintaining aircraft is a difficult thing, as that's one of the biggest costs with fuel, right? So here is a set of processes we'll be able to collect and unify in a smart contract for all the participants to be able to automate them and get the data and optimize them. So the maintenance of an aircraft, whatever is the scheduled maintenance, or when an aircraft is on the ground, over processes like for the OEM, the aircraft configuration, the safety of a part, tracking all the records. And that's the key thing. You don't only track the assets and the processes, but you can also track the records on the assets. So when you sell an engine or you return it to your lessor, all the platform are in place, all the records you need to justify the value of a asset or the fact that you did a good job as a lessee. So the platform is completely not what you may think about blockchain. It's not at all Bitcoin-like or Ethereum-like. It's not decentralized. There is no coin. It's governable. It's scalable. People keep the ownership of their data. It's confidential, so you only share it with the people you wanted to share it with. But it gives you the complete data. And what we are proving also is that you can make that jump without changing your application, without changing your ERP, without changing your MRO system. And you can keep ADI transactions as is. So the Spec 2000 ATA transaction can be kept as is. A lot of benefits for them, and I think I touch on all of them to onboard on these initiatives that is currently launching in the second half of the year. But now let's go back to ULD Care. But I demonstrate that this kind of platform are useful for a lot of ecosystem. What can it bring to ULD Care ecosystem? So here is the status of the platform, and it's a great platform, as Bob said, but we can do much more on top. So first thing is that today the platform is only available for airlines. It's not only a technology problem, it's because the trust, the agreement again, between the parties are in fact backed by the MITA agreement, which is only available to airlines. So it means that because there is this MITA framework for trust, the platform doesn't have any digital capabilities to establish trust like you would use in other area when you transact, and namely the ability to digitally sign transaction. Also, it's a SaaS platform that everybody connects. It's central. It has all the data in it, but the reconciliation is in fact done by ULD Care on behalf of everybody, and you just get your report about, okay, what's due, what's not due. You don't have access to the data, but you can have access to the data through your browser or your application, but you cannot get the data to automatically feed your ULD control manager or your finance tools. Now you cannot. So you cannot do the application integration. You can send UCR through email, through file transfer. You can connect the mobile app that I'm sure Bob talked about to generate UCR through that system. But what would be the next step? The next step effectively would be to open the platform to freight forwarders and non-airline companies so you can charge this demurrage. So to do that, there's a couple steps. First, as freight forwarders could not join MITA, the platform has to use digital signatures, the good old PKI, that can be recognized in court in case there is any litigation. But that means kind of secure that you can make sure that effectively who is sending you a UCR is the people they say they are, and this kind of stuff. So it would permit to trust anybody in the system, including ULD Care from a pure software perspective. The second step is to put all the rules, and we demonstrated during the POC that we can do it with exactly the same results because we run the two systems in parallel for quite a while. You can put all the rules about demurrage in a smart contract. So every entity in the network can use it also to automatically self-reconcile. I don't know if people are reconciling the output of ULD right now, but that would be done automatically by the smart contract. And the smart contract, the good thing it has is at the same time, it will grab the data. So in your system, you all have the data about demurrage and where are your ULDs that you can reuse to connect your inventory management system or your ULD control system. And that data is in fact carried through a distributed ledger, meaning every time transaction will be processed at the ULD Care platform level, everybody would have a copy of his own transaction. The smart contract would reconcile it and put it in the local database that you can connect to with your own tools. So that's the first step that will allow to open the perimeter of ULD Care to non-airline, but still in the context of air cargo. Now, once you have that, when you can open to other kind of industry, other kind of assets, other kind of rules, because you just have to do new contracts. And so you can have especially contracts now that can be used for road containers and trucks and things like that. It will reuse exactly the same platform, plus all the knowledge of a ULD Care ecosystem to set up that. Now you can also, because now you have the ability to exchange data, imagine new level of services where the ULD Care platform could, for instance, mediate IoT feeds, right? Because when you exchange ULDs and if you have an IoT sensor, who should be, where this new data about where the ULD is, who is the current custodian, right? To which system should that forward it? And also you have a problem of all this IoT sensor being of different kinds. So you need, for this kind of ecosystem environment, something in the middle, for instance, to mediate IoT data. It can be about documents. There is a lot of possibilities. So that's in a nutshell just what I wanted to expose, the fact that there are new technologies now that we tested with ULD Care that can make this project of Bob and the ULD Care directors a reality. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yeah, that's fantastic. That fits very, very nicely. I'm aware that time is a little bit working against us here. So, because I'd like to allow opportunity for any questions at the end. So, Arno, can I bring you on, please? I see you need to turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. Are you there?
I'm absolutely here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes. So now Arno is going to tell us a little bit about how we might, Chris ended up with telling us about how this is going to end, the possibilities for working with shipping, and Arno is going to tell us a little bit about that. Arno, the floor is yours.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. So I understand I have to speed up a bit, so I'll try to. All right, so good morning, good evening to everybody. My name is Arno Brody, working at CETA, and I had really the pleasure to work in the project that Chris just described all together with ULD Care in this blockchain project. We've been involved with Chris, with Sky Republic, in the MRO, in other cargo projects. So we definitely believe that technology is really here to enhance our industry. But today I will not talk at all about that. And I would be happy to share with you a couple of things which I'm not primarily familiar with. It's about the maritime industry. Not totally, of course, I would say outside this world, because when we started our cargo project, we're always looking about what's happening in that area. But today's idea is really to give a specific focus on the demurrage and detention in the maritime industry. And hopefully we'll have some interesting thinking for next time. But before we start, let's agree about definition. And this is something which is quite important. In a sea shipping area, what we on our side call demurrage, they call it detention. We'll not go to all the definition and everything, but somehow, I mean, what they call it detention is a charge which can be levied by a shipping transport provider for not returning an empty container to a port or container yard after an agreed time, which is pretty similar, let's say equivalent to what we called in air cargo area, the demurrage fees, where the demurrage in a sea shipping area And again, it depends as well about import and export. It is a fine that freight forwarder, for example, might take, if they do not take the goods away from the port or terminal within a predefined amount of time. But having said that, it's interesting if we're still looking at the sea shipping, what drives the demurrage and detention charges in this world. So as you fully understood, the dealer transportation are different, the process is a bit different. But not surprisingly, what can drive the demurrage charge here is a custom clearance issue, not completion of all document, custom clearance documentation incorrect. So when everything could add some additional days, which can drive higher demurrage fees or detention fees. Unforeseen circumstance, again, by the nature of this business, if we look at the weather condition, labor strikes, shortage of truck drivers, chassis, can drive as well, the increase of demurrage and detention charges, and delay in miscommunication, which in that case, in this area, the forecasted ETA or when the vessel should arrive to which terminals, and sometimes miscommunication or lack of updates is as well impacting more significantly than in aviation, this demurrage and detention fees. Well, interestingly, a quick focus on the post-COVID, because the post-COVID, let's say as of 2021, when you get the boom of the import and export at that time. But what to say here is that it really lead a worldwide equipment scarcity, port congestions, the lack of the container globally, difficult to plan shipment, predict ETA, return, and everything. So a lot of circumstances apply, the application of DND, demurrage and detention charge. So informally, if we have only a few tracks about what it means for shipping lines. If you look at CMA, CGM, informally, we heard that detention and demurrage fees could represent around 10% of their revenue, which is massive. Hapag-Lloyd, we heard about the grapevine that it should represent about 5% of the company revenue, which is still a bit massive. And the idea, again, not those data are verified, it's really informal feedback, but it gives, a kind of area about what it means for this sea shipping industry. So on this slide, I just wanted to give you a few ideas about these detention and demurrage charges. So if you look about after 2 weeks, the demurrage and detention charges really vary per locations. To give you an insight here, Los Angeles, the most expensive or one of the most expensive port in the world. So after 2 weeks, you will have to pay $2,500 plus US dollars for your containers to pay for this DND. Taiwan is as well quite expensive, but opposite to that, in Korea, Busan Airport just paying $132. So there's a lot of disparity between those port conditions. But the demurrage and detention charges not only vary per location, but as well as vary per shipping line. So if you just look at Rotterdam Airport only, so if you use a CMA CGM, after 2 weeks, you will only pay 258 USD. Where if you use another shipping line like Yangming, you will have to pay 1,612. So it's really an interesting area, but where these costs are varying depending on the location and the company you are using. Interesting factor as well, the number of free days. So we have that in aviation. It varies, of course, depending about where you are. But just to give you a kind of scale, depending on if you are in Busan, again, Korean, you will have 11 days free of charge at all. But Los Angeles is only 4 days. And what is interesting is that not only those, I would say, grace period vary per port, but it varies as well for one port per shipping line. If we look at only Belgium in Antwerp, Costco will give you 11 days, where Yangming only 5 days. And the gap as well represents around almost 400 plus USD per container gap. So it's quite interesting about this area. To continue about some trends, a lot of variations, and of course COVID and all this economical, I would say, situation around that. But for the industry, for their industry, so maritime industry, from 2020 to 2021, the average demurrage and detention charges increased by more than 100%. It's just crazy. And the main reason is that the equipment shortage, that they were facing, they wanted to incentive a bit faster the turnaround times. How to make it more expensive, to make sure that the fluidity or liquidity of the equipment on the traffic could help to unlock the congestion. So this was the driver at that time. So behind, I would say, the statistic, let's look at the FMC, the Federal Maritime Commissions, the one you are really looking at the situation, getting the claim, understanding the situations. And interestingly, and it's quite new, earlier this year, they fully acknowledge that there is a lot of discrepancies in practice between the different stakeholders in the maritime. The range of fees are totally a bit disconnected. The billing as well is really complicated. It depends about a lot of criteria, how to issue a bill. The refund as well is complicated, and a lot of operators are really complaining about that. It can take months, and after many months, no one has so much evidence about why they should pay this and not that, and blah, blah, blah. So a lot of disputes. So they all agree that there is absolutely a need to include some minimum standards in the maritime industries, and the D&D, the demurrage and the detention, should be used really to incentivize the movement of cargo, promoting the fluidity. So, I mean, behind that, an interesting factor is that a lot of sea shipping companies are moving into the air. So we took the example of CMA CGM, but as well Maersk, were expanding into the air freight. What it means is that if we really look, and this is my last slide, about what's happening in the aviation, and thankfully to ULD care system, to this orchestration, which started, as of the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, providing a bit more transparency, fairness, and this pre-connection to the aviation community. It's definitely more a jungle in the maritime. No central platform, lack of transparency, as the FMC just mentioned. But one of the things which is interesting is that they always charge for the extended use of the assets. So my takeaway of this presentation is that both aviation and maritime are evolving in the different industries, but a lot of similar issues. So we think that the maritimes can benefit for the many years of aviation industry coordination driven by ULD care, but as well we could as well understand about what are the best practice that those guys are doing, and why we are not maybe applying some of certain charge that we can see in our world. So definitely ULD care has a lot of answers, a lot of solutions, and Chris a bit earlier explained about how technology could enable that. And voilà, right now we are really about seeing a lot of synergies between the two worlds. And this is some ongoing, I would say, work in progress that today we are looking at. And anyone who is welcome to join this this brainstorming working group is absolutely more than welcome. So thank you. This is all for me. So Bob, over to you.
Thank you very much, Arnaud. If you could just stop sharing your screen, that would be handy. And we've just got a very short couple of minutes, almost perfectly timed this. I have one question in the Q&A from Frode. He says, sounds a bit like a prisoner's dilemma in the sense that the industry as a whole is best served by going for demurrage, but the individual airlines don't want to be first in fear of losing business if others don't follow. Any ideas how that can be avoided, gaining a kind of critical mass? I would answer that to say you're absolutely right, Frode. This is a challenge. But our strategy to approach this is to work through the IATA has, I forget what it's called nowadays. It used to be called the Cargo Council. It's now got some other fancy name. I think it's 12 or 16 airlines. Michael Sheen from Atlas is the chairman, and I'm working to get the names of the other airlines. And we believe we have created with the white paper a strong enough argument that we can get support from the members of this group, and in turn get the backing of IATA to lead the industry back into a more disciplined approach. It's going to take a little while, but we think we'll get there. And in a way, we've got a following wind here, because everybody knows at the moment that freight assets, be they ULDs or 40-foot shipping containers, are essential. And if they're not in the right place at the right time, you just can't move the cargo. So we think actually it's not a bad time to be doing this. So with that, everybody, I see we're literally absolutely spot on. I'd like to thank my co-presenters, Chris and Arno. I think you both covered the different aspects very adequately, and I hope everybody has gotten a much more informed view of what is going to be a very big part of ULD Care's activities in the coming months. So thank you very much. And now basically we move to tracks 4, 5, and 6. So everybody needs to go back to the lobby and then reselect whichever track room they wish to spend the next 45 minutes in. Thank you very much for joining us.